Good evening. You're listening to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Ron, broadcasting to you as usual from the Pineless Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I am in the Extreme Studios, and I have also from Central Florida, the young 20-something Professor Pixel, joining me tonight to continue our Season 1 coverage here on Extreme TV of Forever Night. This one is Season 1, Episode 16, Only the Lonely. And I certainly, of course, Professor Pixel, don't mean the old Roy Orbison song or that he may have covered, or if it's the original, who knows. But I thought to myself, what does this title mean? And then as soon as I saw the setup here, I'm reminded of the early 90s, of how the internet was still a dial-up thing on old, you know what telephones are, don't you? With cords.
Yes.
You'd have to plug it in your wall outlet and all that, and that's how we'd get our first modems connecting in there too. Ah, man, that brings back memories. Just like it brings back memories of late night television with commercials and ads for 1-800 or 900 numbers for the adult sex lines, but also for video dating, which predates speed dating in its own form. But I really think that this episode, Only the Lonely, where Natalie gets involved in a speed dating sort of kind of thing. These two episodes we're going to be talking about, between this one and the one for next week's episode 17, all of a sudden, my gosh, we're hitting in a groove where we're having, I think, I personally, some really good episodes, because there's a lot to this that I think is worth talking about. And it deals with some adult topics that I think whenever we talk about Forever Night, about a vampire detective working the graveyard shift who does not want to prey on humans for their blood anymore. He wants to repay society for his sins. They're going back to basics, and it works. This is a good episode. What's your take?
I concur. This episode is really strong. I talked last week about how you got to change that flashback format sometimes, and this one, it almost doesn't feel like Nick's episode.
Right. I agree.
Of one of the main lead of this episode is actually Natalie. There's a hunt for a killer that seems to be going on dates, and then when the woman doesn't put out, he irks them. They're gone. And Natalie, she has this point in her life. She reaches 30 and she doesn't have a boyfriend. She has something going on with Nick, but they don't put a label on it and they don't act on true feelings. So she's feeling a little lonely. They go ahead and they give her like this nice nightie as a gift, and she's like, "Oh, okay, try it on." No,
right. I thought this episode should probably have been like number 3, 4, or 5, because it explains and lays the ground for stuff, much like that next episode would be as well. And I think the show started off strong because we see obviously a 30-ish type couple going back to a room where obviously they've had a first date. Woman's dressed quite stunningly, and the guy seems to be dressed and seems to be professional and all that. And he wants a cup of coffee. He's doing everything he can to worm his way in to get some or whatever. And the girl doesn't want it. They get in there and he gets a little violent. And what I liked about this opening scene, because it hooks you in, is, okay, we know this is going to be the killer. We know it's going to be who done it. We don't have to see him violently taking her over, ripping her clothes off and all that. There's a little bit of innuendo there with the shadows and everything too. But I appreciated how they filmed them from like the shoulders down, because the woman's very attractive. The man is there. This is a young couple. And when they get in, you're like, okay, this guy's one of these kind of not nice guys. And of course, the back of your brain as a guy goes, hey, woman is attractive, can't possibly, do that. How did they meet? If he's a professional, he's a professional, professionals usually, you would think, have no problems dating, right? As we find out, if you're a working woman and you have a high-end career like Natalie does, it's very difficult to form meaningful relationships out of it. So it's interesting, as we've talked about the role of feminism in the show being Canadian, there's certain progressiveness to it. And that's the whole essence of Nick Knight, right? He's trying to be a nonviolent guy. I'm not going to say a pacifist, because he certainly roughs people up. But the idea is he's trying to be a better man and not just be the feral part of us and all that too. And Allie here is realizing her own humanity. So I thought it was a nice touch when they get through the first death, go through the credits and all that. You're right, it's Natalie's episode. Her friends, which none of them we've ever really seen before or account, but they give her the birthday cake. She's blowing out the candles. That's always nice to see all that. They buy her the black negligee and all that. It's just a reminder of, hey, she's an attractive woman. She's intelligent. She's smart. But like most women that are high achievers, at some point they go, can I have it all? Do I want something more? And we don't get that as hardcore in here because it's 30 years ago, but it definitely was a prevalent theme in the 80s, women going back to the marketplace. So I appreciate how the show decides to take one of those progressive ideas and implement it, because you're right. This is not an episode about Nick, who honestly, what surprised me about it is like, what are they going to do with this with the killer? It almost doesn't matter, because it's really all about the supposed triangle between her and Nick and the killer. But I got to say, I was floored, and why I thought this should have been one of the earlier episodes is we get the flashback that you'd mentioned about revamping it, and how we call it the B-level thing, and how it, of course, emphasizes the current theme. We just go to a flashback and how it was implemented before. Those are always kind of thoughtful. But here we get to see how they meet. And it's a couple years earlier, and the body comes in, and it was in an explosion. And then we see the blood coming up in reverse. I'm like, holy shit, why didn't they do this in the first few episodes? But instead of being a cop procedural, lean into the vampire stuff a bit more. I liked a lot of this opening act and going in for the first 20, 30 minutes, where she meets the guy who conveniently walks into her paper bags, not plastic, thank you very much, at the market. Nick's there like a bitch because he forgot her birthday. This is good stuff. This is drama. This is what I expect out of here. How did you feel how this started to develop?
Yeah, no, I definitely enjoyed it. It was very like, well, she needs somebody, and there's a guy who's looking for a lady. And I mean, I think that it seemed to blend quite nicely, even though it was a meeting of convenience. And you have Nick, who in that moment that he's trying to go ahead and find Natalie, he forgot to get her a birthday card, so he didn't join the party at all. So
right.
He went out and was like, you know what? I got to do something. So he gets flowers, and he's going to meet her. And then out of convenience, what happens? Oh, Natalie, you're right here. And who's this? I was liking how all that was going. But you can instantly tell the guy is absolutely who they're looking for. But that's fine. It's good.
Because he came across as a professional. He hid that side of it very well. He's a good-looking guy. He's well-spoken. He appears to be some sort of like business dude, whatever. I don't even care at the office. I don't know how much he's lying, but he's dressed in a suit. He's not whatever. And Nick is acting honestly like the nice guy, which nobody likes, man or woman, right? And what I thought was refreshing too about this episode was that there was a lot of ways to expand the Forever Night universe here, in that there's a lot of day shots, because she's on a lunch date, and so she goes out during her lunchtime, and they go to that park that we've seen Schanke and the crew, all that a few times, but like late at night, right? So this, to me, I'm assuming is the same one because of the way they shot it, and they're sitting on a bench. And part of me was thinking from the dating perspective that, Natalie's not making herself very, very attractive, like she's whatever, and she's like, yeah, maybe I do work too much, and the guy's like, yeah, I think you do, and the guy is basically the catch here, and you're thinking, okay, this seems reasonable for how professional working adults get together. They fit it in and all that. Nick, you don't know if he's getting jealous, but the backstory of him coming, kind of regenerating a little bit back to life, while Natalie's there a couple years ago, and then he drinks the blood bag, right? And he's got the full stuff on. This is so campy, but it's good stuff too, because she's not like in love with him, but she's like, no, I'm a scientist. What makes you think I couldn't figure something out? And so that's kind of the whole B level to it of what we see with Nick being in the modern day, a nice, sophisticated, sensitive, cute guy. But we see him actually how he came to be here, at least in this incarnation. He's all messy, he's dirty, he's very feral and all that too. And they pass each other on the street. And here's another thing that we talked about. We mentioned before, thanks to some of our passionate viewers here about our name pronunciation and orders, I wanted to mention to people that while we're watching the current versions on the Roku channel, free and in decent definition, as opposed to YouTube, there's a Canadian version. There's 2, 3, 4 different versions with different scenes. You and I both kind of thought, or at least me, that they kind of knew how they were. In some episodes, they seemed close. Others, they seemed like she didn't know his secret. And it was confusing. So I don't know if in the middle of the season they decided to nail it down. But we get to see how, like in the very first episode, way back when, episode 1, how he's able to kind of make people forget things. And here you get a little bit of a sense that, okay, they're really trying to be serious about Nick's backstory, and I really like that. The only problem with this episode is they make Schanke be kind of like, whatever, hey, I could set you up with this guy, whatever. They make him be whatever he needs to be, and I just don't know if I cared about it. But, you know, Nick's back was his usual, how do I want to call it? he's not a dirty cop, but he roughs the guy up who used to work for the dating company, and then he kind of strong arms him, basically saying, yeah, for $50 I sold him to some guy and blah blah, and I don't know, and that's just kind of lame. But you're right, this has nothing to do with Nick. He portrays himself very soft because it's about Natalie. So we're watching the slow build up between her going out on the date with this guy to a nursery and all that. So
yeah, because she gets to go out during the day, which she
Yeah.
doesn't normally get to. But
And we don't get to see this part of Canada and the world of Toronto because obviously that's where they're at. So this was refreshing. It was nice. It's like, wow, she's literally got her hair down there in the car driving around. He's not acted. Yeah, we both think he's the killer. We just do, right? So we're going, okay, he's not like, making weird faces at her and all that. He's good, a little nervous, not polished and smooth like he's a player, right? So this is believable. So what did you think about this whole middle part and getting to the final of this episode? What's going on here? I'm thinking it's really good so far.
yeah, no, it's delicious. You get this whole that whole date. She gets to be out and free. And then Nick, who once he's started working and she's been out all day and night, she comes back and he's like, where were you?
He broke into her house.
Right, it broke into her house to go ahead. Where have you been? What's going on?
Using this voice with Natalie. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had company. I guess I shouldn't have broken in. It's like, come on, man. You can't talk lightly a lot of time. He is Welsh, so he's always going to sound good when he talks. Did you notice the scene in there when he's there and the guy's like, well, I guess you have company. I really had a nice time. I hope we do it again. I will see you later. All the pleasantries, right? That anybody could write. It's funny because she takes Nick in the back, and I guess this is supposed to be funny. I don't know. But they shot it where you could see them kind of arguing behind, and their shadows are there. And then she comes out like, no, he's just a friend, and he's standing next to her, and he puts his arm around her and all that. Because you basically know she's like, Nick, you're a nice guy, but you're such an idiot. You don't see that I really have feelings for you. So I'm going to fuck this other guy just because I really want you. Because that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But to that extent, that means she goes ahead and she agrees. I'll go out. Well, yeah, I'll let whatever you want to do. Sure, absolutely. And he's like, well, how would you feel about a vacation? And he's driving her around and taking her to this place. And that's when all the hairs in the back of the neck are raising like, oh no, this isn't right. But not to her.
It's a nursery.
She doesn't even realize that.
Yeah.
All she's thinking about is the flashbacks, which is explaining how when they met and he blew up in an explosion, but because he's a vampire, an immortal being, he came back together and what are you talking about? His face is fine. He looks like he cut himself shaving this morning.
I was going to ask you, so when you saw these flashback scenes with her, the way she was portraying it, I try not to think too hard about it, but I was trying to wonder if you thought that they were repressed memories, and because of what she was going to personally, actually being attracted to somebody because it had been a while, that's coming to the surface, and so she's revisiting it, or that she consciously knew them all the time and just happened to be thinking about them in the moment. I couldn't tell if it was hey, there's something in the back of my mind, I just can't remember what it is, and then she gets clarity because her loins are getting on fire, sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? Because that's just, I don't know, but that's how I took it. I couldn't figure it out.
Well, I took it as, because I swear there is a part in there where she goes ahead and it's after Nick does one of the dumb things that he does. And she goes ahead and it flashes back and he says something and then it cuts back and she says liar and agrees to go.
Yes.
I think you're right. I do need to spend more time out.
The one comment I'll make here before we talk about the ending here as we're wrapping up is that I believe early on they reference a PCR test and they pop Schanke's thumb to get a little blood sample or whatever, and that's the polymer chain reaction test, which you may have heard of over the past few years with COVID testing here in the United States, because you're allegedly able to identify stuff. However, when you do the imaging of it could produce a lot of false positive, and the original guy that created it was against the use of it in COVID and stuff, and it's like you don't think of these things unless they're in mainstream culture, but there was definitely technology back then and all that. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because it's a key component to what's going to happen here at the end, because she's working on him with his blood, right? We've seen that in season 1. One of the workers that helped host the whole party for her, the birthday party and all that with the cake and all that comes in. And this is what Nick does really good. This is the stuff I like. He doesn't really, his dressing game's not particularly on in this episode. Okay, I'll give him a pass. And we don't have the Raven. I'll give him the pass because we got some day scenes. But I love how he just breaks into her place looking for some sort of clue about what's going on with her and all that. And he finds hidden her little black diary, and he just casually starts thumbing through it. And he sees all these really nice diagrams of like alleged like DNA helixes, and there's a little note about 1991 and must try synthetic lipids and all that. And he gets that kind of like that half smile on his face, or almost a really lovingly knowing kind of thing, like, yeah, she is a great woman. I don't know why I'm being so nice to her, whatever. And the thing about it is that like that's when the lady breaks in and she's like, oh my God, I'm glad you're here. And because of these reactions, the PCR test, they find out that, hey, the guy she's going out with has the same one. So that's the clue that they need to find out where it's at. So it goes in a crisis mode to find out what's going on. But again, this is what I thought was kind of neat. We get some vamp action going on because Natalie's got that faraway look and she's ready to get down until they start making out. So maybe the guy's allows you to kiss her because she does exactly the same thing as the chick that got whacked at the beginning of the episode. Oh, I don't know. Maybe we're just going a little too fast, and that's when the guy starts getting all rapey on her and all that too. But she's putting it on him. I'm not going to lie. And this is a little tease. This is a little kind of hotness. You don't have to have full on sex. This is late night TV stuff. So what does Nick do? Tell me what he does here when they're starting to undress each other way off in the nursery. What does he do when he finds the clue to the flower center? We're from Acme Nursing Company and who knows where, Canada.
I mean, when he realizes and he gets the call, Nick, I think she's out with him. And you know what? The DNA looks like they're a match. He just, boom, he flies to him.
Yeah. Oh, we see it. It's not just a hint of it. We see a lot of that really bad kind of first-person camera angle dashing around or whatever. And it's like, I guess he just happened to know where the nursery is. We know we've heard him listening, right? But this is where Natalie runs around and she trips on the hose or whatever. I'm like, okay. But then this is where it gets a little vampy. She trips and falls. And then that's when he goes a little Lulu and he's like, I really liked you. You just never gave me the chance. And he's shaking his head. He's all fraught what he's going to do. Of course, he's going to whack her. But what happens?
I'm going to let you go ahead, actually.
Right at the end of the big speech, because timing is everything, we see the camera fly in, and it's a nice little, window breaking scene. He goes in there and he's fully vamped up, and he takes the guy. And I honestly, the show is very low budget the way we look at it. But he takes the guy and he throws him up through the glass, and he falls down. And of course, he comforts her and all that, tells her everything's okay and whatnot. And then they don't really mention details and specifics, but they kind of talk things out at the end with Stone Tree, and that's just about it. And they have a nice little embrace, and that's basically it.
A potential embrace, because they do hold each other, but there's
embrace. That's all I said. I didn't say hug. I said embrace.
There's a moment of like, are they going to?
Well, it looked like he went to kiss her, and she kind of just turned her head to like, just hold me, But the ha-ha, yucky-yuck bullshit thing at the end is Schanke finally gets, wants somebody in his family to hook up with it. And this dude comes in, and he's kind of like, he's hunky man meat Canadian style at the end, shakes hand, and, Schanke and Nick look at each other like, oh my God, this is a hot piece of ass for Natalie. What's going to happen next? But I don't know. Solid episode. Really, really enjoyed it. This is back to basics, character development with the key people that were around and all that. Much needed rather than a police procedural. I really appreciated what they did here. Final thoughts?
Me too. I agree. I think that this is one of the strongest episodes we've had in a long while. I love the flashbacks because while it's fun visiting the far past, something a little more recent that goes ahead and builds for our characters, all the more important. Loved it. I'm really, really impressed.
Yeah, much needed and everything else there too. So definitely a stronger episode too. I think it's 22 episodes in season one. We're already past the halfway mark. That's why I felt like if this were maybe a little bit earlier in the season, it might have carried more value for whatever is going to be going on later on. I don't know, but we'll get ready to talk about episode 17 next week here on the Extreme Movie Show. So I want to thank everybody for showing up to our sub show, Extreme TV, here Forever Night, as we review a season of a TV show, go through each episode, talk about what we liked and didn't like. I want to thank some of our viewers who have commented recently on the recent episodes. Again, if you're in America, you can watch this free and in decent quality, the best quality I can find on the Roku channel currently as of this recording. So take a look at that. It's definitely worth watching. It's pretty cool. But we'll look forward to watching you guys next week, season 1, episode 17 of Forever Night. Good night now.
This was not a Dan Curtis production, but that juicy drama was.
Yes.